Far beyond the quiet blue skies of Earth, deep in the dark ocean of space, there existed a powerful empire known across the galaxy as the Xylar Empire. Their rule stretched across hundreds of star systems. Many species feared them, and many others obeyed them without question. The Xylar believed they were the strongest race in the galaxy. For centuries, they had won every war they started. Every planet they attacked eventually surrendered. Every species they met either joined them or was destroyed. Because of this long history of victory, the Xylar had developed a dangerous belief. They believed no one could defeat them. In the center of their empire stood their capital world, Xylar Prime. It was a massive planet filled with towering cities, enormous war factories, and fleets of powerful starships. From this world ruled the emperor of the Xylar species, King Varkon. King Varkon was not only a ruler but also a symbol of Xylar pride. He was tall, armored in dark ceremonial metal, and known for his cruel decisions. Many planets had fallen because of his commands, and now a new species had entered the galactic stage. Humans. Earth had recently discovered, faster than light, travel, and had finally reached the wider galaxy. After years of quiet exploration, humans were invited to join the Galactic Council, HFY, meeting place where different alien civilizations discussed peace, trade, and cooperation. When the human representatives first arrived at the council chamber, many alien species watched them with curiosity. Humans smaller than most of powerful alien races. They had no giant claws, no thick armored skin, no natural weapons. To many aliens, humans looked weak. Some of the alien leaders whispered to each other, "Is this the new species from the Sol system? They look fragile. They will not last long in the galaxy." But the humans did not seem worried. They walked calmly into the council hall and took their seats among species that had existed for thousands of years. Among all those watching them, one species laughed the loudest, the Xylar. King Varkon himself had traveled to the council that day, surrounded by armored guards. His glowing red eyes studied the human ambassador with clear amusement. The ambassador was a calm, middle-aged man named Daniel Hayes. He stood quietly beside the human seat, observing the room. King Varkon finally spoke. His deep voice echoed through the council chamber. "So this is humanity?" The room became silent. Many alien knew the Xylar king enjoyed humiliating weaker species. He slowly stood from his throne-like chair and walked toward center of the chamber. "You travel into the galaxy with soft skin, weak bodies, and small fleets," he said loudly. Several alien leaders shifted uncomfortably, but King Varkon continued. "You expect the galaxy to respect you?" A few soldiers laughed behind him. The human ambassador did not react. He simply watched. This seemed to make King Varkon even more amused. He turned toward the council and raised his arm dramatically. "Why should the Xylar Empire allow such a weak species to exist in our territory?" Gasps spread across the chamber. Some alien representatives immediately began whispering. Was he serious? The human ambassador finally spoke. His voice was calm and quiet. "Humanity did not come here for war." King Varkon smiled coldly. "Then kneel." The entire council chamber froze. Many aliens stared at the human ambassador, waiting for his reaction. King Varkon stepped closer. "You have two choices, human," he said. "Earth will kneel, or Earth will burn." The threat hung in the air like a storm. The Xylar king was known for carrying out every threat he made. If he ordered war, it would begin immediately. All eyes turned toward Daniel Hayes. Would the humans surrender? Would they beg for peace? Instead, the human ambassador simply adjusted his coat and looked directly into the king's glowing eyes. Then he asked a single question. "Are you sure you want this war?" For a moment, the room stayed silent. Then laughter exploded from the Xylar soldiers. The king himself began laughing. "You dare challenge the Xylar Empire?" He turned toward the council again. "Let the galaxy witness what happens when a weak species forgets its place." Within hours, Xylar war fleets began moving toward human territory. Massive ships filled with weapons capable of destroying planets left their docks. Across the galaxy, news of the coming war spread quickly. Many alien civilizations watched with interest. Some felt pity for humanity. Others believed the war would end quickly. After all, the Xylar Empire had never lost. Meanwhile, in the human solar system, alarms began sounding across Earth's Defense Command. Satellites detected thousands of approaching ships. The Xylar Armada had arrived. Military officers rushed through command centers. Admirals studied holographic battle maps. The largest alien fleet ever seen was now moving toward Earth. Yet something unusual happened inside the human command center. No one panicked. No one shouted in fear. Instead, the officers calmly began preparing their fleets. Human warships moved into position around the solar system. Defense platforms activated. Missile systems armed. A young officer looked nervously at the main screen showing the incoming alien fleet. "There are too many of them," he whispered. The human admiral standing beside him crossed his arms and studied the approaching ships. Then he said something that surprised everyone in the room. "Good." The officer looked confused. "Good, sir?" The admiral nodded slowly. "We tried diplomacy." He turned toward the screen again. "Now they will learn." Far away, the Xylar Armada continued moving forward. Thousands of ships filled the darkness of space like a storm of metal. They expected an easy victory. They believed humans would surrender the moment the battle began. But they were wrong. Very wrong. Because humanity had a secret the galaxy did not yet understand. Humans did not start wars. But when someone forced them into one, humans did not stop until the war was completely finished. And in a few hours, the entire galaxy would witness something it had never seen before. Far from Earth, the enormous Xylar Armada continued its slow advance through the darkness of space. Thousands of warships moved together like a giant metal storm. Their engines burned with blue light, and their weapon systems were already charged. Inside the command ship of the Xylar fleet, generals watched the human solar system appear on their holographic map. One of the officers spoke with confidence. "Human defenses are weak. Their fleet is small compared to ours." Another general nodded. "This battle will be finished quickly." They believed Earth would fall in minutes. The Xylar Empire had defeated stronger enemies before. Many species across the galaxy had tried to resist them, and every time the result was the same: total destruction. At the center of the command bridge stood King Varkon himself. He had decided to personally watch the destruction of humanity's homeworld. His glowing eyes stared at the small blue planet on the holographic screen. "So this is Earth," he said quietly. One of his generals bowed slightly. "Yes, my king. The human fleet has formed a defense line around their planet." Varkon gave a cold smile. "How brave." He slowly raised one armored hand. "Prepare the first strike." Across the Xylar Armada, thousands of weapons activated at the same moment. Energy cannons glowed with dangerous light. Missile systems locked onto their targets. The human fleet waited silently. Dozens of human ships floated in formation between Earth and the incoming alien armada. Compared to the massive Xylar fleet, the human ships looked small. Inside Earth's main command center, officers watched the same scene unfold. Red warning lights flashed across the room. Enemy weapons charging. Alien fleet entering attack range. The young officer from earlier looked nervously at the main screen. "They are about to fire." The human admiral stood calmly behind him. "Hold positions." The officer hesitated. "Sir, their fleet is 10 times larger." The admiral's expression did not change. "Yes." The officer swallowed nervously. "Should we begin evacuation procedures for the cities?" The admiral shook his head. "No." The room fell silent. Then the admiral gave a simple command. "Activate Phase 1. The young officer looked confused. But the command was already spreading through the human fleet. Across space, human warships suddenly began to move. Not slowly, not carefully, but with terrifying speed. Their engines flared bright white, and the ships broke formation in ways the Xylar commanders did not expect. Instead of retreating, the human fleet rushed forward, directly toward the alien armada. On the Xylar command bridge, confusion spread quickly. One general leaned closer to the display. "Why are they advancing?" Another officer frowned. "That makes no tactical sense." King Varkon watched silently. Then he laughed. "They are desperate." He turned to his fleet commanders. "Fire." In an instant, thousands of alien weapons fired together. The darkness of space exploded with light. Energy beams and missiles rushed toward the approaching human fleet. The first battle of the war had begun, but something strange happened. The human ships did not slow down. They moved faster, much faster. Their engines pushed them through space with sudden bursts of acceleration that shocked the Xylar commanders. Alien targeting computers struggled to track them. Targets moving too fast. Adjust firing patterns. Missiles exploded harmlessly in empty space as the human fleet dodged through the Storm of attacks. Then the humans fired back. The Xylar generals expected a small and weak response. Instead, the human fleet unleashed a terrifying wave of missiles. Hundreds of small silver projectiles shot forward from hidden launch bays. At first, the Xylar officers were not worried. Their ships had powerful shields. But the missiles did not behave like normal weapons. They split apart. Each missile suddenly divided into dozens of smaller warheads. The Xylar defense systems tried to stop them, but there were too many. Explosions began appearing across the alien fleet. One warship lost its engines. Another ship's shields collapsed instantly. Then a massive Xylar cruiser exploded in a bright flash of fire. Shock spread across the command bridge. That ship carried 20,000 soldiers. Another explosion followed. Then another. Human pilots moved through the battlefield with incredible precision. Their ships attacked quickly and disappeared before the Xylar weapons could target them. It was like fighting ghosts. King Varkon's smile slowly disappeared. One of his generals spoke nervously. The human ships, they are using unpredictable flight patterns. Another officer added quickly. Their missiles are adapting to our defense systems. The king's glowing eyes narrowed. That is impossible. But the battle map told a different story. More Xylar ships were being destroyed every minute. Human forces were striking weak points in the alien formation with perfect accuracy. It was not random. It was strategy. Back on Earth, the human command center remained calm. Officers watched the battle unfold on the main display. The young officer who had been worried earlier now stared in disbelief. They're winning. The admiral stood quietly beside him. Of course they are. The officer looked confused. But the Xylar fleet is much bigger. The admiral folded his arms. Yes. He then spoke slowly. But size does not win wars. Half of the Xylar front line had already been destroyed. Far away in space, King Varkon finally understood something was wrong. Very wrong. They were not afraid, and they were definitely not unprepared. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Xylar Empire had entered a war where the enemy was far more dangerous than expected. And the battle had only just begun. The destruction of the first Xylar battle line shocked the entire alien fleet. Ships that had once moved forward with confidence now slowed down, trying to understand what had just happened. The battlefield that was supposed to be a quick victory was turning into something very different. Inside the Xylar command ship, tension filled the bridge. Explosions flashed across the holographic map as more ships lost power or drifted out of formation. Officers rushed between consoles trying to stabilize the situation. One of the generals spoke quickly. Our outer fleet is collapsing. Another officer added with growing worry. The humans are attacking weak points in the formation. They are splitting the fleet apart. King Varkon stood silent for several seconds. His glowing eyes studied the battle map carefully. The human fleet was not just fighting hard. It was fighting smart. Instead of attacking the strongest ships, the humans targeted command vessels, communication relays, and shield generators. Every strike caused confusion inside the Xylar formation. For the first time since the war began, the Xylar king felt something unfamiliar. Doubt, but he refused to show it. These are only ships, he finally said. Ships can be replaced. He turned toward his generals. Prepare the ground invasion. Several officers looked surprised. Ground invasion, my king? Yes, Varkon replied coldly. If humans want to fight, we will crush them where they live. Within minutes, new orders spread through the fleet. Massive transport ships moved forward from the rear of the armada. Each transport carried thousands of Xylar soldiers, armored vehicles, and heavy weapons designed for planetary combat. Their target was Earth. Far below them, the blue planet rotated peacefully, unaware of the massive invasion force approaching. Inside Earth's defense command, the incoming transports were quickly detected. New ships entering orbit, an officer reported. They are not warships. Another officer analyzed the data. Transport vessels. Thousands of them. The young officer frowned. They're planning a ground invasion. The admiral nodded slowly. Exactly. The officer looked confused. But why would they do that when the space battle is still happening? The admiral answered calmly. Because they believe we will panic when their soldiers reach the ground. He looked at the battle map again. They still think humans are weak. The admiral turned toward the communication station. Send the signal. Across Earth, military bases received the same message. Prepare for planetfall. In the frozen northern regions of the planet, human forces were already waiting. Armored vehicles were hidden beneath snow-covered terrain. Defense cannons were buried under layers of ice. Thousands of soldiers stood ready inside underground bunkers. They had trained for this moment for years. High above them, the Xylar transport ships entered the atmosphere. The sky above the frozen battlefield suddenly filled with fire. Hundreds of transport ships broke through Earth's atmosphere at once. Their engines burned bright as they descended toward the surface. The ground shook as the first ships landed. Massive metal ramps lowered, and rows of Xylar soldiers marched onto the battlefield. Their armor was thick and dark, their weapons heavy and powerful. Millions of alien troops began spreading across the frozen land. Their commanders believed victory was certain. The humans were outnumbered. But something felt strange. The battlefield was quiet, too quiet. No gunfire, no explosions, no visible enemy. One Xylar commander scanned the empty snowfields. "Where are the humans?" Another officer pointed toward distant mountains. "Maybe they are hiding." The commander laughed. "Then we will drag them out." The alien army continued advancing. Their footsteps crushed the snow as thousands of soldiers moved forward together. Then the first explosion happened. A hidden human mine detonated beneath a Xylar vehicle, sending metal pieces flying across the battlefield. Several soldiers were thrown into the air. Before the alien troops could react, more explosions followed. Boom, boom, boom. The ground itself had become a weapon. Hidden mines exploded across the battlefield, breaking the alien formations apart. Xylar commanders shouted orders. "Spread out. Find the enemy." But the humans were still invisible. Then the snow around the battlefield suddenly moved. Camouflaged human soldiers rose from hidden positions beneath the ice. Their white armor blended perfectly with the frozen landscape. Gunfire erupted instantly. Human rifles fired with deadly accuracy. Alien soldiers fell one after another. The Xylar army tried to organize a counterattack, but the battlefield had turned into chaos. Human units appeared from unexpected directions, striking quickly before disappearing behind snow-covered ridges. It was not a normal battle. It was a hunt. Back in orbit, King Varkan watched the ground battle through live drone feeds. His claws slowly tightened. "How are they everywhere?" one general asked. Another officer whispered nervously. "They are using the terrain." The king stared at the battlefield. For the first time, the Xylar soldiers looked confused. They were strong. They were heavily armed. But the humans were fighting differently. They were patient. Calculated. Relentless. The Xylar army had expected a simple invasion. Instead, they had walked directly into a battlefield designed perfectly for human warfare. And somewhere within that chaos, a small human strike team was already moving toward a very important target, the command fortress of King Varkan himself. The war was no longer just about defeating an army. Now it was about capturing a king. High above the frozen battlefield, the massive Xylar command fortress floated. In low orbit around Earth, the enormous structure was built like a moving city of war. Layers of heavy armor surrounded its core, and dozens of defense cannons pointed toward space and the planet below. Inside the fortress, King Varkan watched the ground battle through large holographic screens. The frozen battlefield appeared in glowing blue light before him. Every movement of the Xylar army and the hidden human soldiers was displayed in real time. But what he saw was not the easy victory he expected. Xylar units were struggling to move forward. Human ambushes appeared again and again from different directions. Small groups of soldiers attacked quickly and vanished into the icy terrain. One Xylar general spoke with clear frustration. "The humans are using irregular combat patterns." Another officer added quickly. "They avoid direct confrontation and strike from unexpected angles." King Varkan slowly walked closer to the holographic battlefield. "This is not weakness," he said. "This is strategy." The officers around him remained silent. No one wanted to admit that the humans were fighting better than expected. Still, the king believed the battle was under control. The Xylar army was massive, and sooner or later their numbers would crush the human resistance. He turned away from the display. "Send additional ground divisions," he ordered. But before the order could be confirmed, a sharp alarm suddenly echoed through the command room. Red warning lights began flashing across the walls. One officer rushed to his console. "Security alert!" Another voice followed. "Unknown presence detected inside the fortress." The king stopped walking. That is impossible, he said coldly. The fortress was protected by multiple shield layers and thousands of elite guards. No enemy should have been able to enter, but the alarms continued. On a nearby screen, a new security feed appeared. A corridor inside the fortress showed several Xylar guards lying motionless on the floor. Smoke slowly drifted through the hallway. One officer whispered in shock, "Something is inside." The king's eyes narrowed. "Show me the intruders." Another camera activated. The image revealed several figures moving silently through the fortress corridors. They wore dark combat armor with human markings. Human soldiers. The command room fell completely silent. A general stepped forward nervously. "How did they get inside the fortress?" No one had an answer. The human strike team moved quickly through the hallways. Their movements were precise and coordinated. Each soldier covered another as they advanced deeper into the fortress. Security doors attempted to lock down sections of the station, but small explosive charges opened them within seconds. The humans were moving toward the center of the fortress, toward the throne chamber of King Varkon. For the first time since the war began, the Xylar king felt true anger rising inside him. "Send the royal guard," he ordered. Across the fortress, heavily armored elite soldiers rushed toward the intruders. The hunt had begun. Inside the fortress corridors, the human strike team moved with silent precision. Their leader, Commander Elias Ward, walked at the front while scanning the hallway ahead. He spoke quietly into his helmet communicator. "Target location confirmed. Throne chamber is 2 levels ahead." Behind him, another soldier checked the motion scanner. Multiple hostile contacts approaching from the left corridor. Ward nodded. "Prepare." Seconds later, the first Xylar royal guards appeared around the corner. They were massive warriors wearing thick, armored suits and carrying heavy plasma rifles. The guards opened fire immediately. Blue energy bolts filled the hallway. But the human soldiers were already moving. One soldier rolled behind a wall support and returned fire with controlled bursts. Another activated a flash device that exploded in bright white light. The Xylar guards were blinded for a moment. That moment was enough. Human rifles fired with deadly accuracy. Within seconds, the corridor became silent again. The strike team continued forward without slowing down. They had only one objective: capture the king. Back in the throne chamber, King Varkon stood beside his massive command throne. Around him waited the remaining royal guards. An officer rushed inside. "My king, the intruders have broken through the outer security lines." The king's voice became cold. "Let them come." He lifted his ceremonial war blade from its stand beside the throne. "If humans want to face their king, I will show them what true power looks like." Outside the chamber doors, the human strike team stopped. Commander Ward studied the heavy entrance. "This is it." Another soldier placed a shaped explosive charge against the center of the door. "Charge ready." Ward raised one hand. "On my mark." The team prepared their weapons. 3 seconds later, the explosive detonated with a thunderous blast. The massive doors collapsed inward. Smoke filled the throne chamber. Through the drifting dust, the human soldiers stepped inside. Across the room stood King Varkon and his final guards. For a moment, no one moved. Then the Xylar king spoke with burning anger. "So the humans finally arrive?" "Commander." Ward lowered his rifle slightly and looked directly at the towering alien ruler. "You started this war. The final battle inside the fortress was about to begin. And before it ended, the fate of an empire would change forever." Smoke slowly drifted through the shattered doors of the throne chamber. The explosion had torn apart the heavy entrance, leaving broken metal pieces scattered across the floor. Small sparks flickered along damaged control panels, and the echo of the blast still vibrated through the enormous room. Commander Elias Ward stepped inside first. Behind him, the rest of the human strike team spread out carefully. Their rifles moved slowly as they scanned every corner of the chamber. At the far end of the hall stood the massive throne of the Xylar Empire, and beside it stood King Varkon. The alien ruler was even larger than the humans expected. His dark ceremonial armor reflected the dim light of the damaged chamber. In one clawed hand, he held a long war blade that had belonged to Xylar kings for centuries. Around him stood the final royal guards. For a moment, both sides simply stared at each other. The room felt heavy with tension. King Varkon's glowing red eyes studied the humans carefully. These soldiers had crossed space, broken into his fortress, defeated his guards, and now stood directly before him. For the first time in many years, Someone had reached the heart of the Xylar Empire, but the king refused to show fear. "You have courage," Varkon said slowly. His voice echoed through the chamber like distant thunder. "But courage will not save you." Commander Ward kept his weapon steady but did not fire. "We didn't come here to fight an army," he replied calmly. "We came for you." The royal guards suddenly raised their weapons. Energy rifles hummed as they charged for battle. Varkon lifted one claw slightly. "Kill them!" The throne chamber exploded into motion. The royal guards opened fire instantly. Bright blue plasma bolts streaked across the room toward the human team. But the humans were already moving. One soldier rolled behind a broken column for cover. Another fired precise bursts that forced two guards to retreat behind the throne platform. The battle was fast and violent. Plasma blasts burned holes into the metal walls while human rifles answered with deadly accuracy. Within seconds, the quiet throne chamber turned into a battlefield. A royal guard rushed forward with a heavy energy blade, trying to strike Commander Ward directly. Ward moved quickly. He stepped aside at the last moment and fired 2 shots into the guard's armor. The massive warrior collapsed heavily onto the floor. Across the chamber, another human soldier disabled too. Xylar guards with careful shots to their weapon systems. But the royal guards were powerful fighters. One of them smashed through a column and threw a human soldier against the wall with terrifying strength. The soldier struggled to stand again. For several seconds, the battle remained uncertain. Then the humans began to move as one. Their teamwork was perfect. One soldier distracted a guard while another attacked from behind. Within moments, 2 more royal guards fell to the floor. The number of defenders grew smaller. King Varkon watched everything with rising anger. His guards were the strongest warriors in the empire, yet these humans were defeating them, one by one. Soon, only 3 guards remained between the king and the strike team. The fate of the empire was now seconds away. The throne chamber had become silent except for the distant sounds of battle. Outside the fortress, smoke drifted slowly through the broken hall while damaged lights flickered above the battlefield. 3 Xylar royal guards stood between the humans and their king. Commander Ward raised his rifle again. "Last chance," he said calmly. "Surrender." The guards answered with gunfire. The final clash happened quickly. Human soldiers moved with perfect coordination. 2 guards were forced back by accurate rifle fire, while another attempted to charge forward with a heavy blade. He never reached his target. A precise shot struck his armor joint, dropping the massive warrior to the floor. The remaining guards tried to protect their king, but the humans surrounded them from different directions. Seconds later, the throne chamber fell quiet. The final royal guard collapsed. Only 2 sides remained: humans and the king of the Xylar Empire. King Varkon slowly stepped forward from his throne platform. His armor was scratched, but his posture remained proud and defiant. "You believe this war is over?" he growled. Commander Ward did not lower his weapon. "It is." The alien king suddenly attacked. With surprising speed, he swung his massive war blade toward the human commander. Ward barely avoided the strike. The blade crashed into the metal floor, sending sparks across the chamber. For several seconds, the 2 opponents circled each other. The Xylar king was strong and experienced in combat, but he was also alone. Ward waited carefully for the right moment. When Varkon swung again, Ward stepped forward instead of backward. He grabbed the king's arm and twisted sharply. The heavy war blade fell from Varkon's grip and crashed loudly onto the floor. Before the king could recover, 2 human soldiers moved in quickly and forced him down. The ruler of the Xylar Empire hit the ground. For a moment, the king struggled violently, but the humans held him firmly. Commander Ward looked down at the defeated ruler. "This war ends now." Minutes later, the fortress communication systems broadcast a shocking image across the battlefield. Alien soldiers on the frozen ground looked up toward the sky in disbelief. Their king was being dragged across the metal floor of his own command fortress. Through smoke, through broken doors, through the remains of the throne chamber, the mighty ruler of the Xylar Empire was now a prisoner of humanity. The frozen battlefield of Earth had become strangely quiet. Just hours earlier, the sky had been filled with fire, explosions, and the thunder of alien war machines. Millions of Xylar soldiers had marched across the icy plains, believing victory was certain. Now everything had changed. Above the battlefield, the massive Xylar command fortress slowly drifted in orbit. Its once bright weapon systems were now silent. The defensive cannons that had threatened Earth no longer moved. Inside the fortress, Commander Elias Warden, his strike team escorted their prisoner through the damaged corridors. King Varkon walked between them. His armor was scratched and broken from the battle, and heavy magnetic restraints locked around his arms. The proud ruler of the Xylar Empire was no longer walking as a king. He was walking as a captive. Behind him, human soldiers remained alert. Their rifles stayed ready while they guided the defeated ruler through the ruined fortress hallways. News of the capture spread quickly. Across the frozen battlefield, Xylar soldiers began receiving the same emergency transmission on their command screens. At first they thought it was a mistake. Then the image appeared. Their king, captured, dragged through the fortress by human soldiers. Shock spread across the alien army. Entire battalions stopped moving. Weapons slowly lowered as disbelief passed through the ranks. One Xylar commander stared at the transmission in silence. That cannot be real. Another officer checked the signal again. It is coming directly from the Royal Command Network. Around them, thousands of alien soldiers began whispering to each other. For centuries, the Xylar Empire had ruled through fear and strength. Their king was believed to be unstoppable, but now that symbol of power had fallen. Without their ruler, the army no longer knew what to do. Some units tried to regroup and continue fighting, but others simply stood still, staring up toward the sky where their command fortress floated. Inside Earth's Defense Command Center, human officers watched the same broadcast. The young officer who had once feared the alien invasion could hardly believe what he was seeing. They actually did it, he said quietly. The human admiral crossed his arms while studying the screen. Yes. The officer turned toward him. So the war is over? The admiral looked toward the map of the battlefield. Wars rarely end quickly. Then he pointed toward the alien formations. But this one might. Across the battlefield, more Xylar commanders received the same message from their fleet. Their king had been captured, and the humans were offering them a choice. Lay down your weapons, or watch the rest of your empire fall the same way. For several long minutes, the frozen battlefield remained completely still. The wind moved slowly across the snow-covered ground while thousands of Xylar soldiers waited for new orders. But no new orders came. Their command fortress remained silent. Their king was gone. Finally, one of the highest-ranking Xylar generals stepped forward. He looked at the captured image of King Varkon on the broadcast screen and slowly lowered his weapon. We cannot continue this war, he said quietly. Around him, other commanders made the same decision. Weapons dropped into the snow. Armored vehicles powered down. One by one, the massive alien army began surrendering. The war that was supposed to destroy humanity had ended in complete silence. Hours later, the Xylar fleet in orbit also began powering down their weapons. Several ships slowly moved away from Earth, signaling the end of hostilities. Inside the captured fortress, King Varkon sat inside a reinforced holding chamber. Heavy energy barriers surrounded him while human guards stood outside the room. For the first time in his life, the Xylar ruler had nothing to command. No armies, no fleets, no empire. Commander Ward entered the chamber quietly and stood in front of the defeated king. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, Varkon looked up. You could have killed me, the alien ruler said. Ward nodded slightly. Yes. Then why didn't you? The human commander looked at him calmly. Because this war was never about revenge. He paused before continuing. It was about ending the war. Far away across the galaxy, news of the battle spread rapidly through the Galactic Council. Civilizations that once feared the Xylar Empire now watched the same historic recording. Human soldiers dragging the most powerful king in the galaxy across the floor of his own fortress. The message was clear. Humanity had not started the war, but they had ended it. From that day forward, one lesson spread through every star system. Humans may appear small, they may appear fragile, but if someone forces them into war, humans will finish it. Completely. And no empire in the galaxy would ever forget the day the Xylar King was dragged. Across the battlefield of Earth,